In the shadowed corridors of the imperial palace, where whispers of power and ancient knowledge lingered in the very stones, walked a figure whose presence was as unassuming as his influence was vast. Malcador the Sigillite, a name that would become synonymous with the foundation of the Imperium itself, moved through history not as a conqueror or demigod, but as something perhaps more essential, the hand that steadied an empire. The origins of Malcador remain shrouded in deliberate obscurity. What is known with certainty is that he was among the most powerful human psykers ever to exist, with abilities that dwarfed all but the Emperor himself. Historical records place his first documented appearance at the Emperor's side during the latter stages of the unification wars on Terra, though substantial evidence suggests their relationship predated even these conflicts. The psychic might of Malcador manifested in ways that defied conventional categorization. His telepathic abilities allowed him to communicate across vast distances, to read thoughts with surgical precision, and to shield his mind and those of others from external intrusion. More impressive still was his mastery of telekinesis, demonstrated most famously during the Council of Nicaea, when he reportedly manipulated the molecular composition of the air itself to create a perfect acoustic environment for the Emperor's pronouncements. Perhaps most valuable to the burgeoning Imperium was Malcador's gift for divination. Unlike the crude prognostications of lesser seers, the Sigillite's foresight manifested as a profound understanding of cause and effect, allowing him to analyze political and military situations with uncanny accuracy. This was not mere prediction, but a form of strategic omniscience that made him invaluable as an advisor. The question of Malcador's age has fueled speculation among imperial historians for millennia. While officially recorded as being several centuries old during the Great Crusade, certain texts recovered from the personal library of Rogel Dorn suggest a far more extraordinary timeline. References to a figure matching Malcador's description appear in fragmentary records dating back to the Age of Strife, and in one particularly controversial document, to the collapse of the Dark Age of technology itself. Some Terran myths speak of a wanderer who carried a staff topped with an eagle, a description strikingly similar to Malcador's iconic Force Staff, who appeared during humanity's most desperate hours throughout old Earth's history. Whether these tales represent the actual Sigillite or merely a cultural archetype remains unresolved, though the Emperor himself once referred to Malcador as the oldest friend among us during a private meeting with the Primarchs. What can be stated with certainty is that by the time the Emperor consolidated control over Terra, Malcador had already established himself as the foremost administrator of the nascent Imperium. His title of Sigillite derived from his role as keeper of the Imperial Seal, but extended far beyond this ceremonial function to encompass his position as guardian of humanity's accumulated knowledge. The relationship between Malcador and the Emperor defied simple definition. They were not merely master and servant, nor exactly equals. Contemporary accounts describe them as complementary forces, the Emperor as the blinding light of humanity's future, Malcador as the shadow that gave that light definition and purpose. In practical terms, while the Emperor focused on the grand designs of human evolution and the conquest of the stars, Malcador ensured that the machinery of governance continued to function. This dynamic became formalized with the establishment of the Council of Terra, approximately in the 967th year of the 30th millennium. As the Great Crusade expanded humanity's domain across the galaxy, the Emperor recognized the need for a civilian administrative body to manage the burgeoning Imperium. Malcador, appointed as First Lord of Terra, became the de facto head of this council, wielding authority second only to the Emperor himself. The council's initial composition included mortal administrators drawn from Terra's most capable bureaucrats, alongside representatives from the Mechanicum of Mars and other key imperial institutions. Notably absent were the Primarchs and their Astartes legions, a decision that would later contribute to the tensions preceding the Horus Heresy. Under Malcador's guidance, the Council established the frameworks that would eventually evolve into the Administratum, the Imperium's vast bureaucratic apparatus. He instituted the tithe system that would sustain imperial forces, developed the legal codes that would become imperial law, and created the diplomatic protocols for incorporating newly compliant worlds into the Imperium. Perhaps most significantly, Malcador recognized early the need for specialized organizations to address specific threats to humanity. It was at his urging that the Emperor authorized the creation of the Officio Assassinorum to eliminate key enemies without the need for military action. Similarly, the Sigillite personally oversaw the formation of the Divisio Investigatus, a precursor to the Inquisition, tasked with identifying and neutralizing internal threats. Malcador's psychic abilities proved essential to these endeavors. His telepathic skills allowed him to coordinate operations across vast distances before the establishment of reliable astropathic networks. More subtly, his empathic sensitivity gave him an unparalleled ability to identify suitable candidates for positions of authority, to detect deception, and to navigate the complex social dynamics of a rapidly expanding Imperium. This sensitivity extended to his interactions with the Primarchs themselves. While several of the Emperor's superhuman sons viewed the Sigillite with suspicion or outright disdain, Angron and Perdurabo notably among them, others recognized his wisdom and sought his counsel. Robute Guilliman frequently consulted with Malcador on matters of governance, while Magnus the Red engaged him in lengthy discussions of psychic theory and practice. Jagatai Khan, perhaps surprisingly given his independent nature, developed a particular respect for the Sigillite after witnessing his handling of a diplomatic crisis on Chogoris. The normally taciturn Primarch was recorded as stating that Malcador possessed the patience of the eternal steppe and the suddenness of summer lightning, high praise from the Warhawk. Malcador's relationship with Horus Lupercal, before the latter's fall to chaos, was especially noteworthy. The Sigillite recognized both Horus's brilliance and his dangerous pride, and attempted to temper the latter while nurturing the former. Historical records indicate numerous private meetings between them, particularly after Horus's elevation to War Master. What was discussed in these sessions remains unknown, though some scholars suggest Malcador may have detected the first signs of Horus's eventual corruption. The full extent of Malcador's psychic capabilities remained largely unknown even to his contemporaries. While his telepathic and telekinetic powers were frequently displayed, other aspects of his psychic repertoire emerged only in moments of crisis. During the Proximan betrayal, for instance, Malcador reportedly immobilized 3 traitorous army generals simultaneously by manipulating their neural functions, while continuing to dictate orders to loyal forces without pause. More impressive still was his ability to shield his thoughts from other psykers. Magnus the Red, whose psychic might was second only to the Emperor's, admitted his inability to penetrate Malcador's mental defenses. This skill proved crucial during the early stages of the Horus Heresy, allowing Malcador to coordinate loyalist responses without fear of psychic interception. Beyond these active abilities, Malcador possessed an extraordinary psychic resilience. He routinely handled warp-tainted artifacts that would have corrupted or destroyed lesser minds, including several recovered during the Rangdan Xenocides that were deemed too dangerous for study by anyone else. This resilience stemmed not from ignorance of the warp's dangers, indeed, few understood those perils better, but from an unshakable mental discipline honed over centuries, possibly millennia. The question of Malcador's true age remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries of the Imperial era. Certain evidence suggests he may have been active during the Age of Strife, the chaotic period following the collapse of humanity's first interstellar civilization. A journal recovered from the ruins of the Indonesic bloc refers to a Grey advisor who guided the early resistance against Caligan of Ursh, providing strategic insights that prevented the tyrant's complete domination of the Terran continent. More controversial are the fragmentary records from Mars suggesting that a human envoy matching Malcador's description visited the Red Planet during the early phases of the machine cult's development. Accurate, this would place Malcador's origins in the late Dark Age of technology, making him potentially thousands of years old by the time of the Great Crusade. Some radical scholars have even proposed that Malcador may have been one of the legendary perpetuals, humans born with the ability to regenerate from any injury and potentially live forever. This theory would explain his longevity and his close relationship with the Emperor, himself rumored to be a perpetual of extraordinary power. However, Malcador's eventual death during the Siege of Terra seems to contradict this hypothesis, unless his final sacrifice somehow negated his regenerative abilities. Whatever the truth of his origins, by the time the Emperor emerged publicly during the Unification Wars, Malcador had already amassed knowledge spanning virtually every field of human endeavor. His personal library contained texts dating back to ancient Terra, including philosophical works from the Age of Progress, technical manuals from the Dark Age of Technology, and grimoires detailing the first human encounters with the warp. This vast repository of knowledge informed Malcador's approach to governance, which balanced pragmatic necessity with a long-term vision for humanity's development. Unlike many imperial administrators who became lost in bureaucratic minutiae, the Sigillite never lost sight of the Emperor's ultimate goal, the preservation and advancement of the human species in a hostile universe. As the Great Crusade gathered momentum, Malcador's attention turned increasingly toward establishing the administrative foundations that would sustain the expanding Imperium. Where the Emperor and his Primarchs conquered, Malcador consolidated, transforming disparate worlds into a cohesive galactic empire through sheer bureaucratic genius. The Sigillite's first major administrative innovation came with the formation of what would eventually become the Adeptus Terra. Recognizing that military conquest alone could not sustain an interstellar civilization, Malcador drafted the Charter of Departmental Responsibilities in the year 801 of the 30th millennium, establishing the initial 6 high offices that would form the backbone of imperial governance. The Emperor conquers worlds, Malcador explained to the first gathering of departmental heads in the newly constructed Senatorum Imperialis. It falls to us to make those worlds truly imperial. Each high office addressed a specific aspect of governance. The administration handled civil authority and taxation, the chancellery managed diplomatic relations, the exacta controlled census and resource allocation, the Officio Militum coordinated with the expeditionary fleets, the Aeronautica oversaw void travel, and the Prefectura maintained internal security. These divisions, initially staffed by a mere 7,000 administrators, represented the seed from which the vast bureaucracy of the later Imperium would grow. Malcador's administrative genius lay not merely in creating these departments, but in designing their interconnections. He established a system of checks and balances that prevented any single office from accumulating excessive power, while simultaneously ensuring that critical information flowed efficiently between departments. The Sigillite personally designed the hierarchical structure that would allow the Adeptus Terra to scale as the Imperium expanded, implementing standardized reporting protocols and data management systems that remained in use for millennia afterward. Perhaps most impressive was Malcador's foresight in creating redundancies within the system. Recognizing the inevitable inefficiencies that would develop in any bureaucracy, particularly one spanning thousands of worlds, he established parallel administrative paths for critical functions. When one bureaucratic channel became blocked by corruption or incompetence, alternative mechanisms ensured that essential operations continued uninterrupted. The physical manifestation of this administrative vision took shape in the vast complex known as the Administratum Centralis on Terra. Designed under Malcador's direct supervision, this labyrinthine structure incorporated architectural elements specifically intended to facilitate governance. Circular chambers for departments requiring frequent collaboration were positioned at key intersections, while specialized vaults with psychically warded doors protected sensitive information. The building's very layout served as a physical representation of the bureaucratic flows Malcador had designed, with information literally traveling upward through the structure as it was processed and refined for higher authorities. Among Malcador's most significant contributions to the early Imperium was his work on the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that made reliable warp travel possible across the expanding human domain. While the Emperor himself provided the psychic power that fueled this navigational aid, it was Malcador who designed the supporting infrastructure and established the Divisio Astronomica to maintain it. The challenges were immense. The Astronomicon required not only immense psychic energy, but also precise calibration and constant monitoring. Malcador personally selected the first choir of psykers who would amplify and focus the Emperor's power, developing rigorous testing protocols to identify candidates with the necessary abilities and mental stability. More importantly, he established the training regimens that would prepare these psykers for their role, creating meditative disciplines and psychic exercises that maximize their amplification capabilities while minimizing the risk of warp contamination. The physical apparatus of the Astronomicon, the massive psi-reactive crystals, the focusing chambers, the containment systems, emerged from Malcador's collaboration with the Mechanicum of Mars. Drawing on ancient knowledge preserved in his personal archives, the Sigillite provided Martian tech priests with designs that merged psychic theory with advanced technology. The resulting construction, housed beneath the Imperial Palace, represented one of the most sophisticated psycho-technological achievements in human history. Malcador's administrative genius extended to the operation of this critical infrastructure. He established the Adeptus Astronomica with 3 separate divisions: the choir division that managed the psykers themselves, the technical division that maintained the physical apparatus, and the monitoring division that tracked the Astronomicon's performance and made necessary adjustments. Each division operated semi-independently, but with carefully designed interfaces that ensured seamless coordination. The importance of this work cannot be overstated. Without the Astronomicon, the expeditionary fleets would have been limited to short, dangerous warp jumps, making the rapid expansion of the Great Crusade impossible. Malcador's infrastructure turned what might have been a localized human resurgence into a genuine galactic empire, allowing Imperial forces to navigate the warp with unprecedented speed and safety. Beyond these practical administrative achievements, Malcador played a crucial role in shaping the ideological foundations of the Imperium through his contributions to the imperial truth. This secular doctrine, which rejected religion and superstition in favor of rational materialism, became the official philosophy of the expanding human domain. While the core tenets of the imperial truth originated with the Emperor himself, it was Malcador who developed the practical frameworks for its dissemination. He established the iterators, trained orators, and cultural specialists who accompanied the expeditionary fleets, and personally wrote many of the foundational texts they used to introduce newly compliant worlds to imperial ideology. The Sigillites' approach to implementing the imperial truth demonstrated remarkable psychological insight. Rather than imposing this philosophy through pure force, he developed tailored approaches for different cultural contexts. On worlds with entrenched religious traditions, iterators were instructed to gradually reframe spiritual concepts in materialist terms, allowing populations to transition from religious worldviews to secular ones without cultural disorientation. For societies already inclined toward scientific rationalism, Malcador provided more direct approaches that emphasized technological advancement and material prosperity under imperial rule. This nuanced strategy proved remarkably effective during the early Great Crusade. Compliance rates for worlds approached through Malcador's cultural integration protocols were measurably higher than those subjected to more direct methods, with significantly fewer instances of post-compliance rebellion. The Sigillite's understanding of human psychology, honed over his extraordinarily long life, allowed him to engineer cultural transitions that appeared natural to the affected populations. Malcador personally oversaw the training of the first generation of iterators at the Scholastica Imperialis on Terra. These individuals received not only extensive education in imperial philosophy, but also intensive training in rhetoric, cultural analysis, and psychological techniques. The most promising candidates underwent additional mentoring with Malcador himself,